Student leaders. University politics is usually the breeding ground of Kenya's top future politicians. In fact, over 90% of politicians in Kenya today may have started out as student leaders. Student leadership elections are usually as competitive as the mainstream general elections. Being a student leader is an enviable position, but just like mainstream politics, although many vie for the position, only a few are chosen, mostly the vocal and fearless ones. Student leaders are not only given the platform and audience, they also get to meet top politicians who may act as their mentor and open doors for them to join mainstream politics upon graduation. And one thing you should note is that student leadership is not discriminative. Everyone is given a chance regardless of their social economic background. That said, most of the students that vie for that chance are from poor backgrounds. And indeed, our protagonist today came from a humble background. Kenya's Karl Marx. The early days of Karl Marx, Christopher Owiro. Our story starts off in a small village in Nyanza province. The year is 1977. That's when the fiercest student leader that Kenya had ever seen would be born. Christopher Owiro, or Karl Marx as he would be later known, was born in a large, humble, but happy family. Despite being poor, his parents cherished education as they wanted their kids to have a bright future. Christopher didn't disappoint them, as he was very talented and excelled in academics, especially mathematics, which will play a key role later in this story. A student leader is known early. Right from his primary days, Karl Marx is remembered by both his classmates and teachers alike as being very outspoken for his age and a force to reckon with. For his high school education, Christopher Owiro would attend Kisumu Day Secondary School in his hometown. I can imagine Karl reporting for his first day of high school carrying a metallic box, as did most people in Kenya. As he was such an enigma, I picture him as bold and not easily bullied by older students. After his first year in high school, he was known to be welcoming and helpful to first years, perhaps due to the fact that first years are mostly bullied by older students. In high school, students would humorously call him a member of parliament due to his vast knowledge of politics in Kenya. He was also a passionate member of the debate club throughout high school. It was in high school that Christopher would acquire the nickname Karl Marx, the name that would stick with him all his life. And why the name Karl Marx? The answer is simple. It was given to him due to his radical nature. You see, Christopher was pro-communism, just like the legendary German philosopher who helped develop Marxism. And just like in primary school, Christopher would leave a lasting impression on his high school classmates and teachers alike that would continue to linger long after their high school days. University politics, a comrade. The timeline now is the late 90s, at the height of multi-party democracy rallies in Kenya, and Christopher Owiro, alias Karl Marx, joins the University of Nairobi to pursue a BSc degree. His major would be mathematics. See, it was the perfect place in the perfect era for an enthusiastic upcoming student leader to be. Usually, most university student leaders emerge and vie for leadership positions in their third year, but not Karl Marx. You see, Karl would start his leadership earlier than everyone else. With the leadership fire that had been burning inside him right from an early age, Karl would vie for a university position in his first year. It was unheard of. What was even more perplexing was the influence he held as a mere first-year student in comparison to the senior student leaders. The university politics would, indeed, change and Karl's presence would be recognized. Karl Marx as a student leader. Although Christopher Owiro, alias Karl Marx, is revered as the most passionate student leader Kenya has ever had, the truth is, he was never officially elected as a student leader. He remained a de facto student leader. This shows how passionate and humane Christopher was. His activism was never about recognition or power. He just genuinely wanted to make a change. He was a born leader. Christopher Owiro would go on to vie for the university leadership position 3 times, and all 3 times he failed. The students loved him. The leadership loathed him. Maybe there were loopholes. Christopher never forgot his humble background, and it is said that he had a soft spot for the poor. He convinced the university to allow students with school fees, arrears, to sit for their exams. As a student leader, he got acquitted to top political figures, such as the then Kenya president and Hillary Clinton and other top international leaders. He was for the students and fought for their causes. He would often knock heads with not only the university administration, but with the police as well, all while championing for students' rights and human rights as well. Christopher Owiro put other people's interests and happiness before his own. He was truly selfless. A man of his word, a man of the people, an outstanding community mobilizer is how those that knew him defined him. The fall from grace of a student leader. At the University of Nairobi, Owiro seemed to be at the peak of his prime. He had been born in a dusty village, and yet here he was, dining with the mighty. But sadly, just like some other great men in history, the jaws of poverty that he had so much tried to escape from would snatch him back. His fall from grace would begin in November of the year 2000, when he and other student leaders led a demonstration to oppose the introduction of parallel degree programs in universities, citing the fact that not only would it lower the quality of education in the country, but rich students would take opportunities from poor students. Christopher and a few other student leaders ended up arrested during the demonstration, and although they had been arrested and released numerous times before, this time turned out to be different. Desperate for control, the university opted to kind of teach them a lesson. Some of the student leaders were expelled, others were just suspended. Christopher happened to fall under the suspended lot. The suspended students took the matter to court, demanding to be allowed back to school. They lost the case. They appealed the court ruling. They lost again. Life after suspension. Christopher Owiro was deeply hurt by the suspension. He went from dining with the mighty and addressing educated, enthusiastic crowds to being all alone in the midst of the uneducated. You see, according to sources, Christopher took to drinking. And sadly, this new lifestyle would spiral his life out of control. A new hope for Christopher. 2002 was a new dawn in Kenya. The people's voice had been heard, and multi-party democracy had been recognized. There was new leadership. Once the new ruling party got settled in 2003, they gave a second chance to all university students that had either been expelled or suspended for political reasons. Christopher was among those reinstated, but sadly, the old Christopher was gone. The new Christopher seemed to love the bottle more. Nevertheless, despite the university now having new university leaders, Christopher and the other former leaders were recognized and highly respected by the new student leaders. In fact, they were welcomed as de facto student leaders. Karl Marx eventually graduated with honors and enrolled for a postgraduate degree. He again performed exceptionally well in his postgraduate and passed all his units on the first try. He was now eager to find employment as an actuary. His love for mathematics had now paid off. The past comes back to haunt Christopher. Christopher had been passionate about mathematics all his life. He was also extremely gifted in maths. In fact, it is said that he equated everything to mathematics and believed that, quote, "To every problem lies a mathematical solution," end of quote. Sadly, as much as Christopher's life mostly revolved around human rights, it is said that employers were scared of hiring him. Perhaps they were afraid he would lead riots in the workplace, as he did in school, or he will stand up to them and demand for his rights. But unfortunately, Christopher's reputation of boldness, which had helped so many people before, seemed to work against him in finding a job that he was passionate about. The lack of efficient employment opportunities would later aggravate his drinking habits and depression. Despite attempted intervention by friends, former comrades, and acquaintances, no one seemed to be able to help Christopher from his habits. A sad ending. It was later agreed that perhaps a change of environment would help, and Christopher agreed to relocate back to the village where he was born to re-strategize. But sadly, old habits sometimes never die. He would continue drinking. And it was here that in 2013, Christopher would pass away at the tender age of 36. Christopher Owiro's legacy lives on. He continues to be regarded as one of Kenya's most revered student leaders of all time. May he continue to rest in peace.